You'll sing what I tell you, or that useless old woman starves. Vernon Slade's voice thundered through the dim backstage, his finger jabbing toward Chenoa as she clutched her grandmother's shawl. The 24-year-old Cheyenne singer froze, her heart pounding, as Slade shoved Nita, making her collapse with a cry of pain. In a surge of rage, Chenoa hurled a stage lamp at him, sparks flying as it grazed his shoulder. Now, with Slade's men pounding at the door and cries of assault echoing, she faces an impossible choice: betray her people's sacred songs for Nita's medicine or flee into the night, risking everything. Chenoa, a 24-year-old Cheyenne woman in 1918 Montana, carries the weight of her tribe's ancient folk songs in her voice, each note a thread to her ancestors. She lives with her frail grandmother, Nita, whose arthritis demands costly medicine Chenoa can't afford. Drawn into a white-run theater troupe, she's forced to sing twisted versions of her people's music, mocked by white audiences as a novelty, while her own tribe shuns her for selling out. Her secret love for Daniel, a kind-hearted white musician in the troupe, sparks hope but deepens her turmoil, as both communities scorn their bond. Torn between saving Nita and preserving her culture, Chenoa feels the walls of her world closing in. The forest closed around Chenoa like a fist, branches clawing at her as she stumbled through the Montana night, her breath sharp with fear. The shouts of Slade's men and the distant bark of dogs echoed behind her, each sound tightening the knot in her chest. She'd thrown the lamp, seen it spark against Vernon Slade's shoulder, and now she was a fugitive, branded an assailant for defending Nita. Her grandmother's pained cry as she fell haunted Chenoa, urging her to keep running despite the ache in her legs. She found a shallow cave, its damp walls barely sheltering her from the wind, and crouched low, shivering. Nita's words about Cheyenne pride flickered in her mind, steadying her resolve not to surrender. Footsteps crunched nearby, and her heart leapt, certain it was Wade, Slade's brutal enforcer. But it was Daniel, his face pale under the moonlight, whispering her name. He knelt beside her, promising to help her face Slade, his eyes earnest but worried. Chenoa nodded, torn between distrust and desperation, knowing Nita needed her. As they crept back toward town, the forest seemed to watch, silent and unyielding, mirroring her fear of what lay ahead. Daniel guided Chenoa through shadowed alleys, the town's lamplights casting long, accusing fingers across their path. Her heart thudded as they neared her small cabin, where Nita lay suffering. Inside, Chenoa found her grandmother curled on the bed, her face twisted with fever, each shallow breath a stab to Chenoa's guilt for leaving her. She knelt, offering water, her hands trembling as Nita's frail fingers squeezed hers, urging her to protect their songs. Daniel checked the door, his jaw tight, fearing Slade's men might burst in any moment. Chenoa rummaged for medicine, her stomach sinking when she saw only a few drops left in the vial, not enough to ease Nita's pain. Nita's eyes, clouded but fierce, met hers, whispering that Chenoa must return to the troop to earn money, no matter the cost. Daniel promised to watch over Nita, his voice soft but firm, giving Chenoa a flicker of hope. As she prepared to face Slade again, the weight of her choice pressed down: betray her culture, or let Nita suffer. Stepping into the cold night, she felt Nita's love like a shield, fragile but unyielding. Chenoa stood before Slade's office door, her stomach churning as if she'd swallowed stones. His voice boomed from within, calling her a savage troublemaker, each word a lash against her pride. She pushed the door open, meeting his cold, predatory gaze, his finger pointing like a gun. Slade demanded she sing his Indian song tonight, a mockery of her people's sacred melodies, or he'd have her arrested for the lamp incident. Chenoa's fists clenched, her rage flaring at the thought of Nita's medicine, but she forced herself to nod, hating her own submission. Slade sneered, tossing a garish feathered costume at her, ordering her to look the part. Daniel lingered outside, his quick glance promising he'd watch Slade's moves, a small comfort in the suffocating room. As Chenoa left, the costume heavy in her arms, she felt her ancestors' song stirring in her chest, defiant and unbroken. She vowed to find a way to fight Slade, to sing her truth, but for now, Nita's life hung in the balance, pulling her toward the stage and its lies. The theater's lights burned Chenoa's eyes as she stepped onto the stage, the feathered costume itching like a lie against her skin. The white audience's laughter roared, their jeers of wild Indians slicing into her heart. She sang Slade's song, each twisted note a betrayal of her Cheyenne soul, her voice cracking under the weight of shame. A coin clattered at her feet, tossed by a grinning man who shouted for her to dance like a squaw. Chenoa's throat tightened, but she finished, her eyes stinging with unshed tears. Backstage, she collapsed against a crate, sobs breaking free as the audience's mockery echoed in her mind. Daniel found her, his hand gentle on her shoulder, promising they'd find a way to stop Slade. Chenoa clutched the shawl Nita had woven, its familiar threads grounding her. She pocketed the night's earnings, her resolve hardening. This money would buy Nita's medicine, but she'd never let Slade own her spirit. As she stood, the stage lights dimmed, but her ancestors' songs burned brighter, whispering of courage she'd yet to unleash. Chenoa slipped into the cabin, the creak of the door swallowed by Nita's labored breathing. Her grandmother struggled to sit, her arthritis-swollen hands trembling, yet her eyes held a fierce love. Chenoa knelt, confessing the shame of singing Slade's song, each word heavy with self-loathing. Nita's voice, weak but steady, told of Cheyenne warriors who sang through battles, their songs a shield against despair. She urged Chenoa to endure, to outsmart Slade and protect their heritage. Chenoa's tears fell as she held Nita's hand, feeling the weight of her ancestors' trust. She recounted the audience's cruelty, her voice breaking, but Nita's quiet strength silenced her doubts. As dawn crept through the window, Chenoa vowed to fight, her heart stitched with Nita's courage. She tucked the earnings under Nita's pillow, promising medicine soon, and stepped out, the morning air sharp with purpose. Nita's belief in her was a flame, small but enough to face another day under Slade's shadow. Chenoa lingered behind a curtain backstage, her breath catching as she overheard Slade's voice, low and scheming, talking to Wade. He mentioned a recording machine and deals with Carter, words that sent a chill down her spine. Her songs, sacred to her people, were being stolen, twisted for profit. Wade growled about her nosy ways, making her duck behind a prop crate, her pulse racing as their boots passed inches away. She memorized the name Carter, sensing a larger plot, her mind spinning with dread and determination. When the men left, she found Daniel tuning his violin, his eyes widening as she whispered what she'd heard. He nodded, suggesting they sneak into Slade's office to uncover the truth, his quiet courage bolstering hers. Chenoa's fingers tightened around her shawl, her fear warring with a growing resolve to protect her people's songs. As the theater buzzed with the evening crowd, she felt the weight of her ancestors' gaze, urging her to act before Slade's plan consumed her heritage. Daniel's whisper cut through the theater's hum, his face tense as he pulled Chenoa into a shadowed corner. He'd seen Slade hide a strange machine in his office, not a stage prop, but something meant to capture sound. Chenoa's heart sank, her suspicion confirmed. Slade was recording her songs, stealing her people's soul. Daniel proposed, sneaking in at midnight, his voice steady despite the risk. She hesitated, picturing Nita's frail form, but the thought of her songs in Carter's hands pushed her to agree. Daniel promised to stand guard, his hand brushing hers, a fleeting warmth in the cold fear gripping her. They planned to meet after the show, when the troupe slept, their secret binding them closer. Chenoa's chest tightened with the weight of what they might find, but her ancestors' melodies hummed in her blood, demanding she fight. As she stepped back into the theater's glow, the stage felt like a battlefield, and she was ready to strike. Moonlight spilled through the theater's cracked window as Chenoa crept into Slade's office, her heart hammering against her ribs. The air smelled of ink and cigar smoke, heavy with secrets. She pried open a desk drawer, finding a bulky recording machine, its cold metal chilling her fingers. Beside it lay contracts, their words a gut punch. Artists like her, forced into dangerous shows for Carter's profit. Her songs were listed, marked for sale, each title a wound to her soul. Footsteps echoed outside, and she dove under the desk, her breath shallow as Wade's shadow loomed in the doorway. He scanned the room, muttering curses, then left, unaware of her. Chenoa grabbed a contract, stuffing it into her dress, her hands shaking with fury and fear. She slipped out, finding Daniel waiting, his eyes wide with relief. As they fled into the night, the contract burned against her skin, a weapon to expose Slade's greed, but also a chain tying her to danger. Wade's shout shattered the quiet as he spotted Chenoa and Daniel fleeing the office, the stolen contract crinkling in her dress. They sprinted through the theater's maze of props, shadows twisting like traps around them. Chenoa's foot caught on a rope, the contract slipping free, but Daniel snatched it before it hit the ground. Wade's boots thundered closer, his curses sharp with menace, summoning more of Slade's men. Daniel pulled Chenoa into a prop closet, slamming the door as Wade's fist pounded outside. They held their breath, the air thick with dust and fear, until Wade's steps faded, his threats lingering like smoke. Chenoa clutched the contract, her lifeline to expose Slade, her hands trembling with the weight of their narrow escape. Daniel's steady gaze met hers, promising to get the evidence to a federal reporter he knew. As they crept out, the theater loomed like a beast, but Chenoa felt her ancestors' strength, urging her to fight on, no matter the cost. Chenoa slipped into the cabin at dawn, the contract hidden under her shawl, its words still burning in her mind. Nita lay still, her breathing shallow, her face pale under the lamplight. Chenoa knelt, whispering about the recording machine and Carter's plot, her voice cracking with anger and despair. Nita's eyes fluttered open, calling Slade's plan a thief's trap, her voice frail but fierce. She spoke of the night singer, a mysterious Cheyenne who'd fought such greed before, urging Chenoa to find him. Chenoa's heart sank, unsure how to reach this stranger, but Nita handed her an old song, said to summon him. As Chenoa sang it softly, her voice trembling, she felt her ancestors draw near, their strength weaving into her own. Nita's hand squeezed hers, a spark of hope in the dim room, and Chenoa vowed to seek the night singer, even if it meant facing Slade's wrath alone. She kissed Nita's forehead, the weight of her promise heavy, but her spirit unbroken. Chenoa's voice trembled as she sang the ancient Cheyenne song backstage, its haunting notes curling through the theater's dusty air. She hoped to summon the night singer, her last chance to fight Slade's greed. As the final note faded, she felt eyes on her, but the shadows held only silence. The next morning, a folded paper lay under her chair, marked with a feather symbol. It read, "Slade plots with Carter. Find their stash at the forest's edge." Her heart raced, the night singer's presence real and close, yet shrouded in mystery. She showed Daniel the note, his brow furrowing with worry, fearing a trap. Chenoa insisted they go, her resolve hardened by Nita's fading strength. They planned to slip away at dusk, when the troupe was distracted by rehearsals. As she tucked the note into her shawl, Chenoa felt her ancestors' whispers, urging her forward. The theater's bustle felt distant, her mind fixed on the forest and the secrets it held. She glanced at Daniel, his quiet nod steadying her, but the weight of their mission pressed heavy, a storm brewing in her chest. Chenoa and Daniel moved through the twilight, the Montana forest swallowing their footsteps as they followed the night singer's clue. Her hands clutched a lantern, its dim glow flickering over gnarled roots. Daniel carried a map sketched from the note, his eyes scanning for danger. They found a clearing, where a hidden shed stood, its door marked with Slade's initials. Chenoa's pulse quickened, sensing the truth within reach. She pried the door open, revealing crates of papers and another recording machine, proof of Slade's theft. Her fingers traced contracts, listing her songs, each word a stab to her heritage. Hooves thundered nearby, and Daniel pulled her behind a tree, his breath ragged as Wade's voice barked orders. The men passed, unaware, but Chenoa's heart pounded, the papers clutched tight. They slipped back to town, the forest's shadows cloaking their escape. Chenoa felt triumphant yet terrified, the evidence a burning weight in her hands. She vowed to get it to the reporter, her ancestors' songs fueling her courage, even as Slade's shadow loomed larger. Chenoa's heart lifted as she met Say at the Cheyenne settlement, his familiar grin a rare comfort. She begged him to watch Slade, explaining the recording plot and Carter's greed. Say's eyes darkened, his own pride in their songs stirring, but he nodded, promising to help despite the risk. He shared a rumor. Wade had been seen hauling crates to the theater, likely more stolen recordings. Chenoa's stomach twisted, guilt creeping in for pulling Say into danger. She gave him a woven bracelet, a token of trust, her voice thick with gratitude. Tsi clasped her shoulder, vowing to rally others in the tribe. As she left, the settlement's fires glowed, mirroring the spark of hope in her chest. She felt less alone, Say's loyalty a shield against Slade's cruelty. Yet, the thought of Nita's worsening pain gnawed at her, urging her to act fast. Chenoa walked back to town, the bracelet's pattern etched in her mind, a reminder of the fight she couldn't abandon. Say's scream echoed through the night, stopping Chenoa's heart as she rushed to the alley behind the theater. She found him crumpled, blood trickling from his brow, Wade's boot prints fresh in the dirt. Tsi gasped that Wade caught him spying, beating him as a warning. Chenoa's hands shook as she bandaged his wounds, tears burning her eyes for dragging him into this. She whispered apologies, but Tsi gripped her hand, his voice hoarse, insisting their songs were worth the pain. He urged her to keep fighting, his defiance sparking her own. Chenoa helped him to a friend's cabin, her guilt a heavy stone, yet Say's courage lit a fire in her. She vowed to protect him, her resolve hardening like iron. As she left, the stars above seemed to watch, silent witnesses to her growing rage. Chenoa's steps quickened toward the theater, each one a promise to make Wade and Slade pay for every drop of Tsi's blood. Daniel's face paled as Slade's voice roared through the office door, accusing him of disloyalty. Chenoa hid nearby, her heart pounding as she overheard Slade threaten to fire him, leaving him penniless. Slade demanded Daniel spy on her, report her every move, his words dripping with menace. Daniel's voice stayed calm, agreeing to watch her, but his eyes flicked toward Chenoa's hiding spot, signaling his true allegiance. When Slade dismissed him, Daniel found her, his hands trembling as he confessed the threat. Chenoa's chest tightened, fearing for his safety, but Daniel swore to mislead Slade, buying her time. They agreed to move faster, the reporter their only hope. Chenoa touched his arm, gratitude mixing with dread, knowing his defiance risked everything. As they parted, the theater's lights cast long shadows, mirroring the danger closing in. Chenoa felt Daniel's loyalty like a lifeline, but the weight of Slade's suspicion pressed harder, a storm ready to break. Chenoa's hands shook as she and Daniel slipped into Slade's office again, the recording machine glinting in the moonlight. They wrapped it in a sack, along with the stolen contract, her heart racing with the thrill of rebellion. At the post office, she scribbled a note to the federal reporter, begging him to expose Slade's crimes. The clerk's curious glance made her flinch, but she sent the package, hope flickering in her chest. Back at the theater, Daniel's quiet smile steadied her, promising the reporter would act. A telegram arrived later, the reporter confirming he'd investigate but needed more proof, a spark of progress amid her fear. Chenoa hid the reply in her shawl, her mind buzzing with plans to find more evidence. She returned to the stage, singing Slade's lies, but her heart sang of victory, however small. The theater's wall seemed to close in, yet her ancestors' songs whispered of strength, urging her to endure. Wade's boots crashed through Chenoa's cabin door, his snarl filling the air as he loomed over Nita's bed. Chenoa arrived just as he shoved Nita, her grandmother's cry of pain slicing through her. She screamed at Wade to leave, her fists clenched, but he laughed, accusing her of stealing from Slade. Nita, frail but defiant, clutched Chenoa's hand, whispering not to give in. Wade tore through their belongings, finding nothing, and stormed out, vowing she'd regret it. Chenoa sank beside Nita, sobs racking her as she held her grandmother, guilt drowning her for bringing this danger. Nita's voice, soft but fierce, told her to fight, that their songs were stronger than Slade's cruelty. Chenoa kissed Nita's forehead, her resolve reborn in the wreckage of their home. She barricaded the door, her heart heavy with fear, but Nita's courage burned in her, a flame to face the coming storm. Chenoa stood before the Cheyenne elders, her voice shaking as she pleaded for their trust. She spoke of Slade's plot to steal their songs, but their faces hardened, calling her a traitor for singing his lies. Her throat tightened, the weight of their rejection crushing her. She showed them the contract, her hands trembling, but they scoffed, saying she'd brought shame. A young warrior, eyes kind, nodded slightly, giving her a sliver of hope. Chenoa left the meeting, tears stinging her cheeks, feeling utterly alone. Say found her, his bruises still fresh, and urged her to keep fighting, promising to sway the tribe. She clung to his words, her heart aching but defiant. The settlement's fires flickered in the dusk, mirroring her fading hope. Yet she vowed to prove her loyalty, no matter the cost. Chenoa trudged back to the Cheyenne settlement, her heart heavy but determined to win back her people. She knocked on each door, her voice raw as she explained Slade's threats and her fight to save their songs. Most turned away, their whispers of sellout cutting deep, but one elder paused, her eyes softening. Chenoa sang a childhood song for the elder's grandson, her voice trembling, and the boy smiled, tugging his grandmother's hand. The elder promised to speak to the council, a fragile victory. Chenoa's chest ached with rejection, but the boy's smile lingered, a spark in the dark. She returned to Nita, confessing her failure, her tears falling as Nita held her close. Nita's whisper, "You are enough," stitched her broken spirit, urging her to fight on. As night fell, Chenoa felt the tribe's distrust like a weight, but her ancestors' songs hummed, promising she'd find a way. Daniel slipped through the theater's back door, his face tense as he told Chenoa of a singer's tale, a cloaked figure chanting Cheyenne songs in the forest at midnight. Her heart leapt, certain it was the night singer. Daniel sketched the spot on a scrap of paper, his hand steady despite his fear of Slade's spies. Chenoa decided to go that night, her voice firm, the old song Nita taught her burning in her throat. They gathered a lantern and coats, the cold biting as they planned their route. Daniel warned her of Wade's patrols, his worry clear. But Chenoa's resolve was iron, driven by Nita's fading time. They left under starlight, the town silent, each step a vow to find the night singer. Chenoa's heart pounded, Hope and dread entwined, her ancestors' melodies guiding her through the dark, toward a truth that could save her people or destroy her. Chenoa's scream caught in her throat as Wade's fist slammed into Daniel's jaw, pinning him against the theater's office wall. She'd followed Daniel, desperate for more evidence, only to see Wade ambush him, snarling about the missing recorder. Daniel's eyes, bloodshot but defiant, met hers through the cracked door, urging her to stay hidden. Wade demanded the recorder's location, his boot grinding into Daniel's ribs, each thud twisting Chenoa's heart. She clutched a fake recorder she'd crafted from scrap, her hands shaking as she stepped forward, offering it to save him. Wade sneered, snatching it and shoving Daniel into a prop closet, locking it with a cruel laugh. Chenoa's knees buckled, guilt flooding her for endangering Daniel, but his muffled voice through the door begged her to run. She fled, tears blurring her vision, the fake recorder buying time but deepening their danger. The theater's shadows loomed like Slade's grip, yet Chenoa's resolve burned, fueled by Daniel's sacrifice. She vowed to free him, her ancestors' songs a faint pulse in her chest, urging her to fight on. The theater roared with applause as Chenoa stepped onto the stage, Slade's new Indian song heavy in her throat. Carter, the record tycoon, sat in the front row, his sly grin chilling her. She sang, each note a knife to her pride, the garish costume suffocating her spirit. The audience's cheers, laced with mockery, drowned her in shame, Carter's nod signaling his greed for her songs. Backstage, she clutched her shawl, sobs breaking free as Slade tossed her a handful of coins, sneering about her usefulness. Daniel, freed but bruised, found her, his gentle touch easing her pain, promising they'd stop Carter. Chenoa pocketed the money, her heart set on Nita's medicine, but the cost of her performance gnawed at her soul. She looked at the stage, its lights now dim, and felt her ancestors' songs stir, defiant against Slade's lies. As she left for home, the coins clinked, a bitter reminder of her fight. Save Nita, or save her heritage, a choice tearing her apart. Chenoa's heart stopped as she entered the cabin, finding Nita crumpled on the floor, her face pale and feverish. She knelt, lifting Nita's frail body to the bed, her hands trembling as she checked for medicine, finding none. Nita's eyes fluttered open, her voice a whisper, urging Chenoa to save their songs despite the pain. Chenoa rushed to the apothecary, spending every coin from the show, her chest tight with fear of losing Nita. The doctor's grim warning that Nita's arthritis was worsening crushed her hope. Back home, she fed Nita the medicine, tears falling as her grandmother's weak smile broke her heart. Nita begged her to find the night singer, her faith in Chenoa unwavering. Chenoa held Nita's hand, promising to fight, her love for her grandmother a fire against the despair. As Nita slept, Chenoa stared at the empty vial, her resolve hardening. She'd risk everything to save Nita and their songs, no matter the cost. Chenoa's voice quavered as she sang the ancient song in the forest, the night singer's note clutched in her hand. A cloaked figure emerged, his feathered hat low, whispering of a shed holding Slade's secrets. Her heart raced, his presence both comfort and mystery, guiding her to a hidden shack. Inside, she found contracts and recordings, her songs listed for Carter's profit, each word a betrayal. She snapped photos with Daniel's borrowed camera, her hand steady despite her fury. The night singer warned of Slade's spies, his voice urgent, pushing her to act fast. Hooves echoed, forcing them to flee, Chenoa's breath ragged as she hid the photos in her shawl. They escaped, the forest's darkness swallowing their tracks, but her mind burned with the evidence's power. She thanked the night singer, his nod a silent vow, and ran home, the photos a weapon to destroy Slade. Her ancestors' song sang in her blood, a call to fight even as danger closed in. Chenoa's hope shattered as smoke rose from the forest, Carter's men torching the shed to bury Slade's secrets. She stood frozen, the news from a villager sinking like a stone, believing her evidence lost. Checking her shawl, she found the photos safe, a fragile victory sparking relief. Daniel's arms wrapped around her, his voice steady, promising the reporter could still use them. Her heart sank, the fire's destruction a reminder of Carter's reach, fear gnawing at her courage. Nita's weak voice called from the cabin, urging her to rally the tribe, her faith a lifeline. Chenoa sent the photos to the reporter, her hands trembling with hope and dread. She knelt by Nita, vowing to fight, the fire's ashes in her mind fueling her resolve. The night pressed close, but her ancestors' songs whispered of strength, a faint light in the looming storm. Slade's voice thundered through his office, accusing Chenoa of theft, his eyes boring into her like knives. Her stomach churned, but she played scared, promising to sing his songs, hiding the photo's secret. He shoved a new, uglier Indian script at her, each line a mockery of her people, his sneer daring her to defy him. Chenoa's fists clenched, her rage barely contained, but Nita's medicine forced her to nod. She slipped a note to Tse, begging him to watch Slade, her heart racing with fear of discovery. Leaving the office, she collapsed against a wall, tears burning as the script's lies choked her. Daniel found her, his whisper promising to sabotage Slade's plans, his loyalty her anchor. Chenoa stood, the script crumpling in her hand, her ancestors' songs a defiant hum, vowing to turn Slade's stage into her battlefield. Chenoa's steps faltered as she approached Mika, a fellow native performer, his tired eyes mirroring her own. She confessed Slade's recording plot, begging him to testify, her voice thick with hope. Mika hesitated, recounting how Slade's contracts trapped him in dangerous shows, his fear raw. Chenoa shared her fight for Nita, her tears falling, stirring Mika's resolve. He agreed to help, his nod a spark in her darkening world. She told Daniel, his grin lifting her spirits, and they planned to meet Mika secretly. Chenoa's heart swelled, their alliance growing, a shield against Slade's cruelty. She prayed Nita would live to see their victory, her love for her grandmother a steady flame. As she left Mika, the theater's lights flickered, but her purpose burned bright, her ancestors' songs urging her to lead. Chenoa flinched as whispers followed her through the theater, performers calling her a troublemaker. She tried explaining Slade's threats, but their cold stares silenced her, fear of Slade's wrath sealing their lips. Lila, a young dancer, slipped her a note, confessing she'd heard Slade and Carter plotting a final recording. Chenoa's heart leapt, Lila's courage a rare gift, and she promised to protect her. She sang Slade's song that night, her voice hollow, but Lila's note burned in her pocket, a new clue. Daniel met her backstage, his eyes wide as she shared Lila's words, urging them to act fast. Chenoa's chest tightened, the troop's distrust isolating her. But Lila's trust kindled hope. She vowed to use the stage against Slade, her ancestors' songs a quiet strength, guiding her through the growing storm. Daniel's voice cracked as he confessed his family's ultimatum. Stop helping Chenoa or lose their support. Chenoa's heart sank, guilt flooding her for pulling him into her fight, but Daniel's eyes blazed, refusing to abandon her. He recounted, arguing with his father, his voice breaking, choosing her over his kin. Chenoa urged him to step back, tears stinging, but he took her hand, vowing to stay. They planned to sway his brother, hoping for an ally, his determination easing her fear. Chenoa's gratitude overwhelmed her, Daniel's loyalty a light in her darkness, yet worry gnawed at her. She kissed his cheek, a fleeting warmth, and they parted. The theater's hum a reminder of Slade's threat. Her ancestors' songs pulsed, a call to protect Daniel as he protected her, their bond a fragile hope against the coming fight. Chenoa's breath caught as she overheard Slade in his office, boasting of selling her songs to another company before the final show. Her heart pounded, the deadline looming like a noose, her songs on the brink of theft. She whispered the news to Daniel and Say, their faces grim, plotting to disrupt the recording. Daniel suggested smashing the machine, his voice fierce, while Say offered to rally the tribe to storm the show. Chenoa's mind raced, fear clashing with fury. Knowing Nita's time was slipping away, she clutched the photos, their evidence her only weapon, vowing to act before Slade's plan succeeded. They agreed to strike at the next show, their unity a spark in the dark. Chenoa's chest burned with her ancestors' songs, their strength a war cry, ready to reclaim her people's soul from Slade's grasp. Chenoa sat by Nita's bedside, the cabin's lamplight casting shadows on her grandmother's frail face. Nita's voice, barely a whisper, wove tales of Cheyenne ancestors who sang through wars, their songs a lifeline to their soul. Chenoa's heart ached, each word etching courage into her. Nita pressed a beaded necklace into her hands, its weight a vow of bravery, urging her to fight for their heritage. Tears fell as Chenoa promised to save their songs, her voice breaking under the weight of Nita's trust. Nita's eyes, dim but fierce, held hers, calling her the tribe's hope. Daniel entered, his face bright with news. The reporter had received the photos and was digging deeper. Chenoa clutched the necklace, Nita's stories igniting her resolve to rally the tribe. She kissed Nita's forehead, feeling her grandmother's love like a shield against the storm ahead. As she stepped outside, the night air carried her ancestors' songs, a call to lead, no matter the cost. Chenoa's hands shook as she dialed the reporter from the village post office, the receiver cold against her ear. His voice crackled through, confirming the photos were clear, promising a story to expose Slade's crimes. He needed more witnesses, a challenge that tightened her chest, but Chenoa mentioned Mika and the night singer, her hope fragile. The reporter suggested a public event to draw out others, sparking an idea for a tribal ceremony. She thanked him, her heart pounding with possibility, and scribbled a plan to unite her people. Back at the cabin, she told Nita, whose weak smile lit a fire in her. Daniel offered to spread word of the ceremony, his steady gaze easing her fear. Chenoa felt the weight of her mission, but Nita's faith and the reporter's promise fueled her. She stepped into the dawn, the village quiet, her ancestors' songs humming, urging her to gather her tribe and strike back. Chenoa met Say at the settlement, her voice urgent as she shared the ceremony plan to expose Slade. Say, his bruises fading, grinned, vowing to rally the tribe despite his pain. He called friends, their nods cautious but growing bold, stirred by Chenoa's plea. She drafted a speech, her hands steady, each word a weapon against Slade's lies. C suggested inviting local reporters, his eyes bright with defiance, amplifying their fight. Chenoa's heart raced, fearing Slade's retaliation, but C's courage strengthened her. They divided tasks, C to gather the tribe, Chenoa to prepare the sacred grounds. As she left, the settlement's children watched, their curious eyes a reminder of what she fought for. Chenoa's chest swelled with hope, her ancestors' songs weaving through her, a promise to reclaim their voice. She prayed Nita would see this unity, her love a steady flame guiding Chenoa forward. Chenoa stood before her tribe, her voice soaring with a true Cheyenne song, its notes cutting through the ceremony's sacred air. The elders' stern faces softened, tears glinting as her melody stirred their hearts. She spoke of Slade's theft, her words raw, begging them to join her fight. A young elder rose, his voice strong, pledging the tribe's support, igniting cheers from the youth. Chenoa's heart soared, their trust a balm to her wounds, erasing years of rejection. T embraced her, whispering that their people were ready, his pride lifting her. She glanced at Nita, carried to the ceremony, her weak nod a spark of joy. The tribe's drums echoed, their rhythm her pulse, binding her to her ancestors. Chenoa felt whole, her songs no longer a burden but a banner, rallying her people against Slade's greed. Chenoa's cry rang out as Garrett's men stormed the ceremony, their boots trampling sacred ground, shouting "Riot" to justify their attack. They toppled ritual tables, scattering offerings, as the tribe pushed back, voices rising in defiance. Chenoa ran to Nita, her heart stopping as a deputy shoved her grandmother, blood trickling from Nita's brow. She shielded Nita, screaming at Garrett to stop, her rage a wildfire. The tribe drove the men back, their unity a wall, forcing Garrett to retreat. Chenoa cradled Nita, tears falling as she bandaged her wound, guilt choking her for this violence. Say shouted that reporters had filmed the attack, a glimmer of hope in the chaos. Chenoa carried Nita home, vowing to make Garrett pay, her ancestors' songs a war cry, fueling her fight against the men who dared defile her people's heart. Chenoa knelt by Nita's bed, her hands trembling as she cleaned the blood from her grandmother's face. Nita's eyes opened, weak but fierce, whispering that Chenoa must fight on, even if she fell. Chenoa sobbed, promising to save their songs, her heart breaking at Nita's pain. Daniel brought medicine, his quiet strength steadying her, easing Nita's agony. Nita shared a story of her mother, a singer who defied invaders, her voice weaving courage into Chenoa. Chenoa memorized each word, feeling her ancestors' presence, their songs a lifeline. C arrived, reporting the tribe's fury, ready to back her against Garrett. Chenoa kissed Nita's hand, her love a vow to turn this pain into victory. She stood, the cabin's walls closing in, but Nita's spirit lifted her, a beacon in the dark, guiding her to fight for her people. Chenoa gathered Daniel, Say, and Mika in the cabin, her voice firm as she planned to use the ceremony's attack against Garrett. They decided to send the reporter's footage to the press, exposing his brutality. Chenoa wrote a letter to the reporter, her pen shaking, detailing Garrett's crimes. Daniel contacted a printer friend, securing flyers to spread their story, his determination infectious. C proposed a protest at Garrett's courthouse, his eyes blazing, rallying the tribe's anger. Mika vowed to share his story of Slade's abuse, his courage bolstering Chenoa. She felt their unity, a growing force against Slade and Garrett, her heart swelling with hope. Chenoa prayed Nita would see their triumph, her grandmother's love a steady drumbeat, driving her to lead. As they parted, the night whispered of battles ahead, but her ancestors' songs roared, ready for the fight. Slade's orders echoed through the theater, his men watching every performer, suspecting a traitor. Chenoa moved carefully, her heart pounding as whispers branded her a rebel. She avoided Daniel in public, their glances brief but heavy with trust. Wade searched her bag, finding nothing, his glare promising pain. Chenoa passed a note to Lila, begging her to warn Daniel, her hands sweating with fear. Slade thrust a new Indian song at her, its lies twisting her stomach, but she nodded, hiding her plans. Backstage she wept, the song's weight crushing her, but Daniel's whispered vow to disrupt Slade's recording lifted her. Chenoa clutched her shawl, her ancestors' songs a quiet rebellion, turning the stage into her weapon against Slade's tightening grip. The night singer's shadow fell across Chenoa in the forest, his hat low as he revealed himself. A Cheyenne singer, once trapped by Carter's greed. Her heart raced, his story of stolen songs mirroring her own, his pain raw, He offered a witness, a former Carter worker, ready to testify, a key to destroy Slade. Chenoa's breath caught, his alliance a lifeline, promising to join her at the final show. She thanked him, tears welling, feeling her ancestors' approval. He warned of Carter's spies, urging speed, his voice a call to battle. Chenoa told Daniel, his eyes wide, planning to use the witness to end Slade's reign. She felt hope surge, the night singer's truth a torch in the dark, guiding her to reclaim her people's songs. Chenoa and Daniel huddled in the cabin, their voices low as they planned a protest at Slade's final show. She would speak, exposing his crimes, while Daniel seized the stage's microphone, his resolve iron. Tay promised to bring the tribe their presence, a wall against Slade's men. Chenoa wrote her speech, each word a blade, her hands steady with purpose. Daniel secured a megaphone, his grin fierce, ready to amplify her voice. She contacted the reporter, inviting him to witness their stand, her heart pounding with hope. Fear gnawed at her, Slade's power looming, but Daniel's hand on hers anchored her. Chenoa felt her ancestors' songs rise, a battle cry, ready to shatter Slade's lies on his own stage. Chenoa's heart thundered as Slade's roar cut through the theater, his spies whispering of her planned protest. He ordered Wade to seize her before the show, his voice dripping with malice. Tay spotted Wade lurking near her cabin, his warning swift, pulling Chenoa through a back alley to safety. Her breath hitched, the narrow escape fueling her resolve as she hid in the theater's storage room. Slade's men combed the stage, their boots echoing, but missed her shadowed corner. She scribbled a note to Daniel, slipped through Lila's hands, confirming she was safe. Her hands trembled, fear clashing with defiance, knowing the protest was her last stand. Chenoa clutched her shawl, the night singer's words echoing, urging her to face Slade on his own ground. The theater's hum grew louder, the final show nearing, and her ancestors' songs surged, a war cry for the battle ahead. Chenoa slipped into the theater's dressing room, her pulse racing as she faced Mrs. Slade, the woman's eyes wary. She pleaded, voice low, revealing Slade's plot to steal Cheyenne songs, her words raw with Nita's pain. Mrs. Slade flinched, her loyalty to her husband crumbling as Chenoa spoke of Nita's suffering. She agreed to testify, her voice trembling, demanding secrecy to protect her name. Chenoa promised, her heart lifting, a powerful ally gained. She thanked Mrs. Slade, tears brimming, and rushed to the stage, the protest moments away. Mrs. Slade sent a covert note to the reporter, backing Chenoa's claims, her betrayal of Slade a spark in the dark. Chenoa felt hope flare, her ancestors' songs weaving strength, ready to shatter Slade's empire with truth. As she stepped into the wings, the stage lights burned, a battlefield calling her name. Daniel's fists clenched as he forced the sound booth's lock, his breath sharp, knowing Wade was close. Wade's shout rang out, his boots pounding as he charged the door, splintering wood with each blow. Daniel shoved a crate against it, buying seconds, and grabbed the microphone, his hand slick with sweat. He tossed it to Chenoa, yelling for her to take the stage, his voice fierce over the chaos. Wade broke through, lunging, but C tackled him, their struggle a blur. Daniel sprinted to Chenoa, his face bruised but defiant, standing by her side. The audience murmured, confused, as stage lights flickered, casting jagged shadows. Chenoa gripped the microphone, her heart a drum, her ancestors' songs roaring, ready to unleash the truth. The theater trembled, a storm breaking, and she stepped forward, her voice the spark, to ignite it. Chenoa's voice shook as she faced the audience, the microphone cold in her hands, Slade's glare burning from the wings. She accused him of stealing Cheyenne songs, her words sharp, exposing his deals with Carter. Gasps rose, some shouting liar, but she held up the photographed contract, the reporter projecting it for all to see. The crowd stilled, faces shifting from doubt to shock, her truth cutting deep. Cheyenne voices cheered, their pride lifting her, drowning Slade's furious bellows. He lunged for the microphone, but Daniel blocked him, fists ready, his loyalty her shield. Chenoa called for justice, her voice steady, urging the crowd to reject Slade's greed. The reporter's camera flashed, capturing her stand, her ancestors' songs a tide, carrying her words to victory. She stood tall, the stage hers, a warrior reclaiming her people's soul. Mika climbed the stage, his voice raw as he told of Slade's cruel contracts, forcing him into deadly performances. The audience leaned forward, horrified, as he bared his scars, proof of Slade's brutality. Chenoa gripped his hand, tears falling, his courage fueling hers. He spoke of their shared dream to protect native songs, his words a fire spreading through the crowd. Murmurs turned to shouts, condemning Slade, who stood frozen, his power crumbling. The reporter scribbled furiously, Mika's story, a dagger to Slade's lies. Chenoa thanked him, her heart swelling, their unity a wall against their enemies. Cheyenne warriors encircled them, their presence a vow, shielding Mika from Slade's venomous glare. The stage shook with the crowd's outrage, and Chenoa felt her ancestors' songs soar, a triumph born of shared pain and defiance. Cheyenne voices rose, their sacred song filling the theater, a wall of sound against Slade's fading empire. Warriors surrounded the stage, protecting Chenoa and Mika, their faces fierce with pride. An elder joined them, his voice booming, declaring the tribe's fight against Slade's theft. Some white audience members stood, clapping, their support a crack in the old divides. Chenoa's heart pounded, the tribe's unity healing years of shame, her voice joining their song. Daniel steadied the crowd, his calm presence grounding her, ensuring no chaos broke their stand. C led more Cheyenne forward, their numbers overwhelming Slade's men. Slade screamed for order, his face red, but the song drowned him, a tide of defiance. Chenoa felt her ancestors' spirits, their songs a victory cry, reclaiming the stage as sacred ground. Carter stormed the stage, his voice smooth, offering money to save the theater, a bribe to silence the truth. Some cheered, swayed by his wealth, but Chenoa shouted, exposing his role in stealing her songs. The night singer appeared, his cloak sweeping, leading a trembling witness, Carter's former aide. The aide confessed Carter's crimes, his voice shaking, detailing years of cultural theft. The crowd turned, booing Carter, their trust shattered. Chenoa's chest swelled, the night singer's nod a spark of triumph, his witness, her sword. Carter fled, the reporter chasing him, camera flashing. Chenoa stood with her tribe, their song unbroken, her ancestors' strength a storm, sweeping away Carter's lies. The theater shook, truth rising, and she knew the fight was nearly won. Federal marshals burst through the theater doors, their badges glinting, armed with the reporter's evidence. They seized Slade, his curses echoing as they cuffed him, dragging him from the stage. Garrett, pale and stammering, was bound next, his excuses ignored, his corruption laid bare. Chenoa watched, her breath catching, relief flooding her as their empire fell. The Cheyenne embraced her, calling her their champion, their pride washing away her years of exile. Daniel took her hand, his smile weary but warm, whispering they'd done it. The reporter promised a front-page story, his pen still scratching, immortalizing their victory. Chenoa's heart ached for Nita, longing for her to see this moment, her ancestors' songs a hymn of justice, echoing through the silenced theater. Chenoa's legs buckled as she reached the cabin, finding Nita still, her breath faint under the lamplight. She called for a doctor, her voice breaking, carrying Nita to the hospital, each step heavy with dread. The doctor's grim words that Nita's arthritis had won crushed her hope. Chenoa sat by Nita's bed, holding her hand, tears falling as she shared their victory. Nita's eyes opened, her smile faint, whispering pride in Chenoa's fight. Chenoa sang a soft Cheyenne song, her voice trembling, feeling Nita's love. The doctor warned time was short, and Chenoa clung to Nita, her heart breaking, vowing to honor her. Her ancestors' songs wrapped around them, a gentle farewell, carrying Nita's spirit as Chenoa faced the end of her world. The tribe gathered on sacred ground, their voices low as Chenoa stood, Nita's necklace heavy around her neck. Elders apologized, their eyes wet, naming her the keeper of Cheyenne songs. She sang, her voice soaring, each note a tribute to Nita's love, uniting her people. The tribe vowed to build a cultural center, Tse's voice loud, offering Chenoa its leadership. Her heart swelled, their trust a home after years of exile. Daniel stood by her, his nod quiet, promising to help her dream. Reporters watched, their pens moving, spreading her story. Chenoa felt Nita's spirit in the wind, her ancestors' songs a crown, declaring her victory complete. She stood tall, the tribe's love her strength, ready to carry their songs forever.